Question is, if you get a lab report back and it says hydrocodone on it, and what's the chance of that being a different drug if a different analyst analyzed it? Is that correct? So the crime lab is a accredited laboratory, and Kermit is on the national board of crime lab directors, and we have really specific protocol for how we can do any test. There are scientific working groups for every subject, and drug chemistry has one as well. There are specific tests. We're given a little small arsenal that we're allowed to do, but we have to do one or two of these tests every time that are very specific. There are a few drugs that have some non-specific, we call them false positives, but we do other tests to rule that false positive out. Whenever you get a report back that says hydrocodone, if it's from the Arkansas Crime Lab, then it's with scientific certainty that it's hydrocodone.
How do you know the guy was following the protocol, though?
Well, we have a peer review process, and so every case is reviewed by another analyst, and we have some peer review Nazis at the crime lab, and we really don't like to use that term lightly because it's hard to work with some people sometimes because they are so strict on doing the peer review process. I think Kermit had something to add here.
No, I think, I'm glad he brought that up because, and that, not just drugs, but any case in the laboratory, you don't just go issue a report. It has to be technically reviewed by another qualified analyst, whatever discipline you're in.
Again.
Not tested again. Now, if it's ever brought up and it needs to be tested again for whatever reason, then by all means we can do that.
And we actually do that. There's a lot of things that ASCLD requires, the American Society of Crime Lab Directors. They require that you do a certain number of proficiency tests, which are blind tests. One person makes this sample, and they know exactly what the answer should be. We use certified standards that we know where they came from. We have to pay lots of money to get these certificates that explain exactly what that sample should be. We give that to another analyst, and then they work it. And if they get the wrong answer, they get taken off of casework. And so it's a very important test to get right. But we also, so there's a flaw, and we're always trying to look at the scientific method and make sure that everything we're doing doesn't have any scientific holes in it. So there's a scientific hole with a blind test. A blind test means that one person knows the answer and the other person doesn't, but the person that doesn't know the answer knows that this is a test. And so they're going to do everything that they should ever possibly do to get the right answer. Well, we also do double-blind tests, which mean that neither one of them knew that there was even a test going on. And most of the time that happens by samples that get retested later on, and we have lists that we do every year. Not every section is able to do retesting of evidence, but that's considered a double blind because you never know which case is going to get retested. And so we probably will test 75 or 100 cases a year, again, by a different analyst. And we're going to just do the same, protocol that we use every time over again. And if we don't get the same result, we're required to report that, and we will report it because we like to stay very transparent and make sure that we're doing everything above board. And that person will get taken off of casework. So it's very important that you get the answer right all the time, but it's very important that you follow the same protocol every time as well, so that these have been validated methods that work the same every time. And we have to calibrate our instruments. We have to calibrate our balances. There's tons of stuff that we're doing all the time that has nothing to do with casework, just so we can make sure that the science is as good as humanly possible to get that result the same every single time. And there might be some other ways to help fix any kind of holes that we have in the process, but we're constantly trying to think of what a defense attorney is going to do to us in court and how are they going to try to shred our report. And so we want to try to cover every hole, make sure that the prosecutor or the defense attorney doesn't have any question about our results ever. Anytime you make a mistake and it gets to court, your witness is shot, and you might as well go find a new line of work. There's just no chance for error. And so we spend a lot of time before it ever gets to court making sure that that result is going to be that result every time it gets tested.
I was just going to ask Eduardo if he would follow up on that, because I know part of your area is teaching on field work and being sure that what's collected in the field is accurate. Could you talk about the provisions and protocols that are in place for the field aspect of that?
Certainly. I look for best practices. Best practices that come from where? Best practices that come from accepted methods. Best practices that have been identified as a result of case law that has been decided at the federal level, at the state level. I look for policies, procedures. Your word was Nazi, something Nazi. We call them peer review Nazis. We call them self-inspection programs. And the documentation that you generate as a result of showing a third party that you are checking yourself continuously, as well as opening your doors to other kinds of third-party scrutiny. You've got other individuals and you've got certifications that you need to strive for and continually train your people, make sure they're passing their exams and so forth and what have you. I'm a big proponent for continuing education. Michelangelo, practically in his deathbed, I am still learning. None of us know it all. And the day that one of us says that, you might as well retire. We are always continually learning, no matter what position you're in. Things change, the technology changes, the theories of litigation change and what have you, because the defense attorneys are paying attention and the plaintiff attorneys. So what was truth at one time may change. Other states are doing things that may be a little different than what's going on and so forth. We don't have time to rest on our laurels. We have to continue to maintain an active research environment in every working environment. There always has to be revisitations. There always has to be opportunities to revise your best practices.